Okay, so I'm joined now with Kane Race, who is the Senior Lecturer with Sydney University's Department of Gender and Cultural Studies. Good morning, Kane. How are you?
Good morning, Stephen. I'm well, thanks.
That's good. You launched a book last night at the Oxford Hotel. It was a very swish affair. Lots of people turned up, which was great. That was put on by the bookshop Darnhurst. Your book is called PleasureConsumingMedicine. I didn't get to read it overnight, but the person who launched the book, Professor Susan Kippax, kind of gave a very detailed overview. I guess it's about all manner of drugs, recreational and prescription, which would include alcohol, tobacco and so forth, as it pertains to gay culture. Is that about it?
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in the distinction between licit and illicit drugs, the dynamics of the contemporary pharmaceutical industry, and the paradox of a situation in which the pharmaceutical industry increasingly produces all manner of medications, not simply for the purposes of restoring health or treating disease, but actually for the purposes of making life better. So if you think of drugs like Viagra or certain applications of the SSRIs, antidepressants. And so on the one hand we have a pharmaceutical industry that's producing drugs in this way, and yet at the same time we have a punitive war on drugs escalating in many parts of the world, despite the fact that the logics for which people take drugs are often quite comparable.
Well, I was just going to put in a little aside there. One of the greatest things about being a psychiatrist is you never actually have to cure anybody. I've been on SSRIs for about 15 years and I couldn't live without them, to be frank.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, because one of the sort of critiques of SSRIs and antidepressants is that this is all a sort of con of corporations and so on, and so there's been a number of exposés of the pharmaceutical industry which I think have their place, but what they tend to forget is that a lot of people, as you say, can't live without some of these drugs. Like, they actually make life considerably better, and to me it seems very important to register the consumer's experience of drugs.
Well, I mean, until depression is actually recognised in the broader community as a real condition, people are going to sort of say, well, what is this? You know, just pull your socks up and get on with it, you know. But I'm thinking also in the case of antiretrovirals, they won't actually cure the condition, but once again, you can't live without them, can you?
That's right. I mean, I think that it's wrong to think of antiretrovirals as a cure, because they don't necessarily return the body to a normal state, but what they do is make life livable. Make it possible. And all drugs, whatever drug you're talking about, doesn't just have one effect, it has multiple effects. And so in the case of antiretrovirals, you might get extended lifespans, but at the same time other effects that are more or less bearable. So in that context as well, I think it's very important to sort of promote a consumer vocabulary or a consumer sort of literacy around these drugs, so that people are better equipped to sort of negotiate with medical professionals and so on about what effects they're prepared to tolerate.
Fair enough. Now, getting on to illicit drugs, back in the late 80s, early 90s, it seemed that everyone would be taking ecstasy on a weekly basis, and that was seen to be a rather benign drug. Now things have got a lot more sort of dark and dirty with things like crystal and also GHB, of course. So what do you think has caused the change?
That's kind of the $10 million question. Part of it, I think, is just drug trends move to different places. People get bored of the effects of certain drugs and move on to other drugs. I can't help thinking also, though, that part of what's producing the shape of crystal use within the gay community at the moment has to do with the intense sort of moralised and prohibitionist environment around precisely that drug, which makes it quite difficult, I think, for people to develop practical techniques of moderation and safety around it.
But you would argue that that is at least one drug where the war should be staged?
No, I wouldn't say that's a drug where the war should be staged at all.
Oh, okay.
I guess what we're talking about here is the link between sexual risk-taking and crystal. That's how this problem has been understood.
They never really made a causal link there, though, did they?
No, they haven't made a causal link. Basically, what the research shows that it's not really clear. And so I think, given this, we need to ask why it is that crystal meth has become this sort of compelling explanation for sexual risk-taking, an explanation for scientists, but also an explanation for people on the ground.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that this really has to do with the ways that we think about rational behaviour. Very hard to account for risk in terms
barebacking technologies. When can we see that published?
A version of it's published in a collection called Gendered Risks, edited by Ellie Hannah Moffat and Pat O'Malley, and a revised version is coming out, I think, next year in a book edited by Mark Davis and Corinne Squire called HIV Technologies.
Okay, well, I might get you back later on to talk about that.
Okay, that'd be great.
In the meantime, Pleasure Consuming Medicine is available at the bookshop, Darlinghurst, and all other good bookstores that would cater to that kind of thing?
Yes, well, I think it's available at Glee Books and, a number of academic bookstores and...
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay, well, I hope the sales go well. I've been speaking with